Never seen anything like this. That is a monster boil.
There's an amazing fishing event every summer at Lake Mead called boil fishing, and I can't believe more people aren't out here doing it.
Holy cow. Just like that, out of nowhere.
Oh my god.
To me, this seems like an amazing pastime with friends and family. The kind of thing you'll remember for years. The excitement, the teamwork, the chaos of everybody catching fish at once creates memories that stick with you. I mean, just check out all of these fish swarming the surface that you guys can catch. My whole goal with this is to get more people out here to experience this for themselves. That's why I woke up at 3 a.m. every weekend this summer just to figure out all of the basics. That way, you don't have to. In this video, I'm going to cover everything you need to know on how to get started. We'll talk about what boil fishing actually is, how to fish for one, and the best way to approach them without spooking the school. I'll show you the best spots and locations I've found, the right times of the year and the time of day to go, and the exact gear and lures I recommend. So, by the end, you'll have everything you need to know to crush boil season. Let's start here. What do we mean by boil? Most people never even associate the word boil with fishing, but in the Southwest, we do. When a fisherman talks about a boil, we're not talking about water getting hot, but we are using some of the characteristics of a boil to help explain what a boil means in terms of fishing. The word boil means bubbling, and that's exactly what it looks like on the surface of the water. In fishing, a boil happens when striped bass or other predatory fish push schools of bait fish, in this case, threadfin shad, up to the surface. The predators attack from below, and the bait fish scatter around the surface in a panic, and the water will literally look like it's boiling. The Las Vegas Review-Journal describes it as the surface disturbance that occurs when a bunch of stripers surround a school of bait fish and start feeding. And Fish Explorer from Colorado puts it simply as, a boil is a situation where a school of predatory fish attacks a school of bait fish, pushing them to the surface. Now at Lake Mead, the predatory fish is the striper, and the bait fish is the threadfin shad. It's important to know this because I will be using the word boil for the rest of the video. Now, when someone says fishing for boils, they typically are referring to throwing their lure right in the middle of a boil and catching a fish that is actively feeding on shad. When casting into the middle of a boil, you have a very good chance of hooking up to a fish, and that's what makes boil fishing so much fun. I've walked away with 40 to 50 fish in a couple of hours on a good day from doing this. And if you're wondering why I keep all of my fish, well, stick around until the end of the video. With this method, you and your friends can all hook up on the exact same time. Catching fish out of a boil really isn't the difficult part. Getting close enough to the boil is what makes it challenging. So the main goal when chasing boils is to get close enough to cast right into them and hook up. But there's a tricky part. When you're approaching a boil, it's really easy to scare the fish away. Your first instinct might be able to rush over there as fast as you can, engine roaring, but that's going to spook the fish away. So the next logical thought might be to creep over using your trolling motor, and that can work, but if you move too slowly, the boil might vanish before you even get there. And this brings up a question: how long does a boil typically last? Well, sometimes they can last for a few seconds. They'll be gone before you even have a chance. Other times, a few minutes, and occasionally, an hour. And usually, if they're lasting this long, they typically tend to drift around a lot. Now, in my experience, the bigger the boil, the longer it typically tends to stick around. Small boils, on the other hand, they pop up and disappear quick. So, there will be situations where you just have to gun it and risk spooking the fish, because if you don't, the opportunity will be gone. And that's why whenever you see a boil, the first thing you should do is look at the size, and then ask yourself if you're going to be able to reach it with the trolling motor, or do you need to use the engine. Now, when you do fire up the engine, that doesn't mean that's the only thing you can use. You can use the engine and the trolling motor together. Let me explain. So if a boil is far away, what I like to do is gas it over there until I'm about 50 to 70 feet away. I'll switch to my trolling motor, and I'll calmly ease over there. This approach tends to work pretty good. Another tip is don't charge straight at the boil head on. Instead, come from the side. This gives everyone on the boat a good casting angle, and it helps keep the school from spooking. If you dive right into the middle of it, even on a massive boil, the fish will usually disappear in a couple seconds. Even on this boil, I wasn't to the side enough, or I should have stayed back a little bit. I've never seen them stick around for long once you're right on top of them. Now, this whole time, I've been talking like you have both an engine and a trolling motor. But let's be real, not everybody has that setup. Some of you might just have a boat with an engine that's on the loud side, and some of you might just have a kayak or a canoe or a John boat with a trolling motor. And that's totally fine. You can still fish for boils. Don't think just because you don't have a perfect setup, you can't fish for them. I've caught plenty of fish with only my engine, and I've also caught plenty of fish with just my trolling motor. So you might not be quite as effective as someone with both options, but you can absolutely get it done. Now, before I move on, I need to clear something up. If you don't have a boat, kayak, or some kind of watercraft, and you are planning on shore fishing for stripers, for boils specifically, you're going to be very limited. First of all, boils happen a decent distance away from shore, so they're not quite in the casting range. And while there are a few spots that work pretty well, most of the time, boils are a game of mobility. So yes, people do get lucky and boils will pop up next to them, but that's pure chance. Most boils will be far out of your range. Now, if you're already shore fishing for, let's say, bass or carp, then why not keep an extra pole just ready in case a boil pops up next to you? But if your only plan is to chase boils from the bank, you're probably going to end up disappointed unless you're in one of the few shore spots that can actually give you a good shot, and I'll cover these later in the video. Now, keep in mind, boils can happen anywhere, but there are some spots that I've noticed are worth mentioning, and let's go over them. The marinas. As I stated earlier, the marinas are a great place to chase boils, and especially if you're on a kayak or any kind of watercraft that isn't motorized. I've seen boils pop up in Caville Bay and Hemingway Harbor all over the place, but there are some downsides to this. Well, one major downside. When you're fishing near the marinas, you're going to see a ton of boils pop up inside the tire barrier. But unfortunately, you're not allowed to fish inside the no-wake zones, and the marinas are considered no-wake zones. So, a lot of the time you'll just be sitting there waiting for the boils to drift outside of the zone. My next spot worth mentioning is Government Wash. Government Wash can be found just past Las Vegas Bay, and it is by far one of the most popular spots for boaters during boil season. This is because it has a couple unique qualities. First of all, the wash is pretty narrow, and most of the boils that happen here are in water that is only about 20 feet deep. So naturally, the baitfish and the stripers are more compact, making it easier to spot boils and get to them. Another unique thing about this spot is that you can actually find seagulls here, which isn't that uncommon around Lake Mead, but in this area, you will find a lot around here. Now, you might be thinking, wait, I thought we were learning about boils, and you'd be right. But seagulls can actually be a great trick for locating them. You see, they aren't interested in the stripers themselves, but the threadfin shad, which is exactly what the stripers chase during a boil. So that means both stripers and seagulls target threadfin shad. The seagulls will circle above the threadfin shad, and sometimes they will get there even before the stripers start the boil. From their aerial view, they can spot activity long before we can. What's nice about this is that seagulls keep doing the work for us, so they'll guide you from boil to boil, and if we can't spot the next boil that pops up, they probably will, so it's pretty convenient. When boating around here, one thing you have to watch out for are ghost trees. There are a bunch of trees out here, and if you're not careful, they could damage your hull. And as of this recording, Government Wash is closed to vehicle access, so the best way to get here is by boat currently. The National Park Service made this decision in late July 2024. Campsites were turning into permanent setups with people actually living out here. And with that became more trash, abandoned vehicles, and even crime. So eventually the National Park Service stepped in by blocking road access and cleaned everything up. The good news is that Government Wash isn't gone for good, and it's projected to reopen this fall of 2025. And why is that important? Well, for all of my shore fishermen, this is probably your best spot at having boils start up right next to you. Why is that? Well, it's because this area is generally pretty small, super active, and once it reopens, it's definitely where I would personally go if I was trying to fish for boils from shore. For this next spot, I want to share a situation that can happen anywhere on Lake Mead, but for me, it was just north of Hemingway Harbor near the old water pump that used to supply Las Vegas with water. At this location, I ran into one of the biggest boils I've ever seen, and it lasted well over an hour. I have some footage from the encounter, and it is a great example on how to approach a boil, so let's get into it. Now, like I explained earlier in the video, I approached it from the side instead of head on, and I shut off my motor before getting too close. As you can see, it worked because the boil doesn't spook, but one thing I would have done differently is to approach it a little bit closer because we were barely not in casting distance. Now, after hooking up, the boil started to take off, and half the struggle was keeping up with it. I had the trolling motor set to the highest speed, and the key was to creep up as close as you could so you could cast into it directly. And then after we hooked up again, the fish would push off and the chase would start up again until we were back into range. This went on for several cycles, and sometimes it would take several minutes to catch up. But this was worth it because it gave me way more opportunities to get within casting distance. Using this method, we pulled in around 25 to 30 fish from a single boil. Now, I have a few honorable mention locations, but I want to emphasize something first. Boils can happen anywhere in Lake Mead, and even some of the spots I have mentioned earlier will sometimes have no boils. So it's important not to get too committed to a spot for so long. The best strategy for these cases is to fish it for a few minutes, give it like 10 to 15 minutes, casting around, and if you don't see any activity, keep moving. Sometimes in a day, I will go to 2, 3, maybe 4 locations and I won't see any boils, but eventually I always will run into some with this method. Using this method, here are all the locations I have ran into boils. So, Boulder Island, Hemingway Harbor, this whole stretch of the water pump, this island and all around it, all of these coves here, a few of these coves, Government Wash, this whole stretch from Burrow Point to Indian Canyon, along Hemingway Wall and right next to it, Castle Reef, right in the middle of the Narrows, and this one really did surprise me. Then in Echo Bay, I had boils here, 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 and here. Now, I found all of these boils using that strategy, but I'm not showing you these spots so you can go there and be guaranteed to find boils. In reality, the next time you head out, there might not be a single boil in any of those locations. I showed you to emphasize that boils can happen anywhere on the lake, and once you find a boil, I've noticed that you usually keep on seeing them pop up throughout the day in that same general area. Let me explain. On one trip, I found boils near Hemingway Wall, and for the rest of the day, I kept on finding boils all along this stretch. Another day, I found a boil near the water pump, and for the rest of the day, I kept on finding boils in this whole area. So keep in mind, once you find a boil, you should keep finding them around the same general area. But here's the thing, even the best spots won't help you if you go at the wrong time of the year, because boils are a seasonal thing. Basically, at Lake Mead, boils start up around June and they run through September, maybe into early October. But if you really want to have peak action, I would say July and August are your sweet spots. When it comes to timing, I really put in work to figure this out. I was out there from sunrise to late afternoon almost every single Saturday this summer. Getting up at 3 a.m. was not easy. Here's what I found. Boils can happen pretty much at any time of the day, as long as the sun is out, but you won't see them at night, obviously. What was really interesting is that on all of my trips, I never saw a boil during gray light, and I only saw one boil during first light. Now, I know that's supposed to be the magic hour for a lot of other types of fishing, but apparently not here. The best action hands down was in the middle of the day. usually from noon to 3 p.m. Even when it was 110 degrees out, those were the craziest boils. There's just something about that intense midday heat that really seems to bring stripers to the surface, but overall, as long as the sun is out, you will still find boils. And personally, I would get out here around 6 to 7 a.m. at the earliest. One factor that makes boil fishing super difficult is the wind. The wind makes the water turbulent, and this is a big factor for boil fishing. You need to be able to spot the stripers breaking the surface from a far distance, but when it's windy and it's wavy, this becomes much harder. This doesn't mean you won't find them though. I've still spotted a lot of boils on windy days, but I've probably missed a lot too. So make sure you check the wind report before heading out. Most of the time, it's pretty accurate, but there have been days where the wind report is way off. Now, let's talk gear. When I'm fishing somewhere new, the setup can feel a little daunting, so let's go over it. So first of all, you can choose between a spinning reel or a bait caster, but if you're just starting out and you want something simple, I would definitely recommend the spinning reel. They're just a lot less complicated. My spinning reel combo is the 13 Fishing Fate V3 6 feet 7 inches, and it's rated for 3/16 to 5/8 ounce lures, paired with a 13 Fishing Calong 6.2 to 1 gear ratio. The combo was about $100 at Sportsman Warehouse, and this reel works perfect out here. Now, here's the thing. When I double-checked the price before filming this, I realized that the exact combo might not even be available at Sportsman Warehouse anymore, and honestly, I kinda lucked out on the price. I only paid $100 for the pair, and if you were to buy them separately now, you're probably looking closer to $56 for the reel and $80 for the rod, so that's about $140 to $150 once you add tax and shipping. So I started looking for a solid alternative that I'll recommend, and this is probably what I'm going to buy the next time I get a combo, which is pretty soon. So it's the Okuma Seimar 3000 size spinning reel paired with a good 6-foot ugly stick, medium action, one piece. Both of these are available on Amazon, and you can pick them up for $115 total. If you're more into bait casters, I did use the Lose Mash Crush with an ugly stick carbon rod. But to be honest, it's kind of overkill for boils. The spinning rod just makes it a lot easier when things get hectic. For line, I like using the 15 to 20 pound reaction tackle braid. Just grab a 300-yard spool off of Amazon and you're set. For the leader, I actually used the Cast King monofilament 20 pound test. For lures, I would definitely go with jerk baits. I've been using these ones you can get on Amazon. They come in a pack of 6 for about 15 bucks. And they're all about half an ounce, and that's a pretty good weight, so keep that in mind for other lures you might want to try. Also, keep a few extras on you when you're fishing because you might lose some. Another lure that worked pretty good out here is this jig. That's actually a saltwater lure. We weren't expecting this one to work too well, but it was hooking up pretty consistently, and I think it was because of 2 factors. The first factor was the weight. This is an ounce weight, so it was able to cast really far out there into the boils. The second factor is that it only has 1 treble hook compared to the 3 treble hooks that the jerkbaits have. And there's actually a benefit with this because you can actually unhook the fish a lot faster and cast into the boil before it disappears again. And if I'm being honest, I don't know which one is better, but I do know that both of them work. One, you're able to cast more and potentially catch more fish, and the other one, you are able to catch, well, you're able to guarantee the fish that do bite. So you just gotta weigh your options. Also, make sure you bring pliers because getting the fish off quickly will help you land a lot more fish. Now, once you got all your gear, let me give you a quick rundown on how I would put it all together. So basically, when you have your spool, you're going to fill it up with a majority of that braided line we talked about. After that, you're going to tie on your monofilament leader, and you're going to use the double uni knot to connect the braid with the monofilament. This is crucial. If you haven't heard of this knot, just look it up on YouTube. There's plenty of tutorials. Now, once the knot is finished, all I do is I reel it in a few times, and then, last but not least, you tie your lure of choice to the monofilament using the Palomar knot. Very critical knot as well, and then you're good to go. Also, on these kinds of adventures, make sure you pack a cooler and some ice. there's a pretty good chance you will catch a couple fish. And for the ice, I would definitely recommend stopping at this Sinclair. If you're driving through Boulder City, this Sinclair will give you 2 bags of ice on the house if you fill up your boat with gas. So that's a pretty good deal. Next up, you might be wondering what the limits are or the regulations you'll need to know before heading out. So I'm going to mention some that I think are most relevant for boil fishing. First things first, you need a Nevada fishing license. So to fish at Lake Mead, you can pick one up at most stores like Walmart Supercenters, Endow Office, Bass Pro Shop, Sportsman Warehouse, or even Cal Ranch. But honestly, the easiest way to do it is just go online through the Endow website and buy one. Now, in terms of catch limits, the good news is that stripers are super plentiful, and they actually want you to catch them. So if a striper is under 20 inches, there is no limit. Catch as many as you like. But if it's over 20 inches, the limit is 20 per day. Honestly, you will rarely ever see one over 20 inches. You can pretty much just have fun and not worry about limits with stripers. I have fished out here for years, and I've maybe caught 1 or 2 stripers at Lake Mead over 20 inches. Now, about hooks and lures. Some people get this confused on the amount of hooks you can have on a lure. So, what the law states is that for the purposes of this section, hook includes not more than 3 baited hooks, not more than 3 fly hooks, or not more than 2 plugs or similar lures. No more than 2 such plugs or lures, irrespective of the number of hooks or attractor blades thereto may be attached to the line. Now, for some people, they're afraid to use lures with 3 treble hooks, but here at Lake Mead, that shouldn't be a concern because what matters is the number of plugs or lures you have attached to one line. You can have as many treble hooks as you want on one lure. The only big restriction is on umbrella rigs. You can only have up to 2 lures on a single rig. The reason I mention this is because I do recommend that you use those jerkbaits, and they do have 3 treble hooks on them, so it's important to know that you're in the clear to use them. Also, if you're bringing a boat, just know there are a ton of extra regulations like having a throwable if your boat is over 16 feet and making sure like you have the Coaga muscle sticker and decals. I'm not really going to dive into that because there's a ton of stuff you need, so this really isn't the video for that. But anyways, I really want to see more people out here fishing for boils. It would really make my day. I think that this is an awesome activity that people don't really know about or participate in Las Vegas, and it would be great to see you guys out there. If you want to watch another one of my videos that YouTube thinks you'll like, well, check the video out on the right. And as I mentioned earlier, if you want to know why I keep every striper I catch at Lake Mead, check out the video on the left. Anyways, thanks for watching. Until next time.